We are on Mem Amud Aleph, Mesechus GITTEN. Just the Chazer. Talking about an Eved Knani. An Eved Knani becomes the property of the master. So do the subsequent kids. And he must be circumcised, he must go to the mikvah. And then he's obligated in mitzvahs. An Eved Knani is obligated in mitzvahs just like a Jewish woman. Not mitzvah say Shesman Gom, etc. And he can only marry a Jewish woman if he gets a get shichur, shtar shichur, a bill of emancipation. It means even if the owner has a yeyush, even if the owner makes him hefker, until he actually gets a shtar shichur, we'll see even if the owner dies, until he gets a bill of emancipation, so he cannot marry a Jewess. On the bottom of Lamed Testament Beis, just the last line and then we'll continue. Rabbi says, Eved shenasa as bas chorin bifnei rabo yatza lecheres. That if an Eved marries a free woman in front of his master, so the Eved goes free. Why? Because if the master did not object, it must be that the master must have freed the slave if he's letting the slave marry this Jewish regular woman. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan kol kach yesh biyadecha. Are you sure? How's that possible? We have a brisa that seems to argue on that. Vanishon nehakosef shtar erisin l'shivchas Rabbi Meir omer mikudeshes v'chamer omer ena mikudeshes. If you write a shtar erisin to your shivcha, to your Eved, so Rabbi Meir says you're mikudeshes because we assume that you're seemingly already free. Chamer omer ena mikudeshes. So that seems to be a contradiction, because over here we're saying that if you get engaged to your shivcha, it's not mikudeshes because you can't engage to your shivcha, and yet we see that if the Eved gets married in front of the Rabbo, so we say it's a good marriage because Lamaisa we assume that the Eved was free. So why don't we assume over here that when you write the shtar erisin l'shivcha, so clearly it means that the Eved was already free, so why don't we assume that they should be mikudeshes? Kidama Rabba bar of Shiloh kisher Rabbo iniach lotfilin hachanami kisher Rabbo yisio leisha. No. The difference is that even if the person's not free, so the Adon might not bother saying anything when the Eved gets married in front of him. So that's why it says that Eved shenases paschorn bifnei Rabbo. So over there when it says Yatza lecheres, what does that mean? No, that means kisher Rabbo hisio leisha. That means the only time that we're going to assume that the Eved is free is when the Rabbo himself goes ahead. So kisher Rabbo hiniach lo tefillin hachanami kisher Rabbo hisio leisha. So when the Rabbo is Hisio Leisho, so in that case, when the Rabbo marries off the Eved, we're going to assume that the Eved was already free, because the Rabbo would never marry off the Eved if the Eved wasn't free. But in a Chanami, if the Eved goes ahead and gets married in front of the Rabbo, would not be Yatza Lecheres. So the Gemara says, so basically what's coming out, in essence, if you think about it, is the following. You're coming out by saying that Kisher Rabbo hiniach lo tefillin Kisher Rabbo hisio leisha, that the case where we say that the person was free was where the Adon married off the Eved to somebody else. It must be that the Eved was already free, or else the Rabbo wouldn't marry it off. But at the end of the day, it's coming out that he's going to end up doing an Isser. You're telling me that it's going to come out according to the Chachamim, Eina Mikudeshes, because in the case where he himself gets engaged to the woman, we're not assuming that the woman was freed. So we're saying that when he marries off his slave to somebody else, we assume that she's already freed, because he would never have marry off the slave unless the slave was already free. And yet, when he himself wants to get engaged to the slave, we don't assume that the slave was free. The Gemara is saying, I don't understand. Why? So basically what you're telling me is that we're assuming that he's going to do an Isser, he's going to get engaged to somebody that's not free, but he would never marry off his Eved to somebody that's not free. He would never marry off his Eved if the Eved is not free, because the Maisa, he wouldn't do that. It seems to be a contradiction. It makes no sense. Says the Gemara of Rav Menachem bar Yitzchak, Chacham Ma'iskin on the Amar La Tzeibo v'Hiskachibo. Rabbi Meir Savar Yesh B'Lashon Hazel Lashon Shecher. Rabbi Rabbanan Savar Ein B'Lashon Hazel Lashon Shecher. No, Ein Achanami. Of course, if the Adon himself marries off the woman to somebody else, or the Eved to somebody else, for sure we assume that the Eved was freed. If the Rabbo himself goes ahead and gets engaged to the woman, for sure, even Rabbi Meir would say, even Chacham would say Mikudeshes, because of course he's not going to marry the Eved unless the Eved's already free. So what does it mean when Chachamim say Eina Mikudeshes? No, they're arguing about a case where he frees her and engages to her at the same time, and they're arguing whether you can accomplish both at the same time. For sure, if he just says, I want you to get engaged to me, then we have to assume that she's already free, because he would never ask her to marry him. They would never go through he would never go through the halachic process of getting engaged unless she's already free. So we can assume that she's already free. But in this case, where he says to her, I want you to go ahead and be free, and at the same time, the same star should be a star kedushin, that's where they argue. That's where Rabbi Meir says it still works, and that's what Chaim say, no, you can't do both. If he would just say mikudeshasi, then we assume that she's already free and it'll work. But if he says, I want you to go ahead and be freed and be mikudeshasi with the same star, that's where he would come and argue and say, no, you can't do both with the same star. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Eved sheiniach tefillin bifnei Rabbi yatsa lecheres. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that an Eved who puts on tefillin in front of his Adon goes free. Well, again, why? Because if the Adon's allowing him to put on tefillin, which he's not chayiv in, so then schemingly he must have already freed him. This is going to be similar to the case we just said, that if an Eved marries somebody in front of his Rabbo, so then we assume they free him. Well, we're going to reject it in 1 second and say, no, we just said before what? It doesn't mean that he went ahead and watched this Eved put on tefillin. If he watches the Eved put on tefillin, or if he watches the Eved get married to a woman, that doesn't mean that he necessarily freed the woman. It's when he himself goes ahead and marries off the Eved to a woman, or he himself puts tefillin on the Eved, that's proof that he freed him. He might not say anything, he might not put his hands up, he might say, okay, whatever the Eved does, I'm not going to bother. Doesn't mean that I freed him. But once he himself is actively going ahead and doing something that would have been an Isser had the Eved not been freed, in that case we assume he wouldn't be over an Isser, and it must be that he freed the Eved before putting tefillin on the Eved, or before marrying off the Eved.
Is the mice putting tefillin on taking the place of the star?
No. This is the putting on the tefillin and the marrying him off is just proof. It's proof that he had freed the Eved beforehand.
So he can't be doing a mice to show.
No. He needs to go ahead and he needs to free him or against shich or whatever. But the point is that we want to know. Again, it was an interesting because I was thinking to myself, like, what's the nafkamina? The nafkamina would be whether the day before the Eved did something, was the Eved an Eved at the time or not. But at the end of the day, the question is, does this act that the Rabbo is doing, or does this act that the Eved is doing in front of the Rabbo, does that prove to us that the Eved had been freed previously?
Is it necessary for him to put?
So that's another question. We don't want to discuss women wearing tefillin on camera over here, but that's really the question over here. That's our thinking the same thing. It sounds like over here, if you're equating an Eved with a woman, so the same thing over here. It sounds like he would never be over the Isser of putting tefillin onto a Eved / woman. But I don't remember if this was brought up in the discussions at the time, but whatever. It comes around every few years. So
somebody's wife, I forget who, Rabbi Meir's wife.
Yeah, that's a separate. Okay, what? No, but it is because the Gemara assumes. The Gemara assumes the Gemara asks over there that he would never do an Isser of marrying off the Eved / putting tefillin on the Eved if he had not freed the Eved first. So the Gemara is looking at it that it would theoretically be an Isser to put tefillin on the Eved. That's what the Gemara looks at it. Says the Gemara, Meisvei, I already jumped ahead one step. But Eved sheiniach tefillin bifnei Rabbo goes l'cheres. So Meisvei lo vehimenu Rabbo she'asa Rabbo apotropos o sheiniach tefillin bifnei Rabbo she'kara shel shpizing b'beis haknesim in Rabbi gan aliyah Raizel lo yatsa l'cheres. For our purposes, you see clearly that if he puts on tefillin in front of his Rabbi, Raizel lo yatsa l'cheres. Again, we're not talking about whether he goes free with this act or not. It's whether it's proof that he already set him free. We see it's not proof that he set him free. And you just told me that if he puts on tefillin in front of his Rabbo, and the Rabbo seemingly doesn't go ahead and yell and scream, then it means that the Rabbo in fact did set him free. So which one is it? So again, he answered the same way we said before. I'm a Rabbo bar Shila, kishe Rabbo hiniach lo tefillin. No, if he doesn't say anything, it's no proof that he himself freed him. But if he goes ahead and physically, actively goes ahead and puts tefillin and marries off the Eved, then for sure it means that he freed him because he would never do the Isser actively with his own hands. Ki asa Ravdimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Dimi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Misha Amar B'Shas Mitaso, somebody who says at the time that he's about to die, quote, Plonis Shivchasi Al Yishtabdu Bala Achar Mosi. My Ploni, my Shivcha, she's been very good to me. Ploni Amoni has been very good to me. Girly, Ploni, whatever. She's been very good to me. So go ahead and you should not be Meshabed her after I die. Says the Gemara, because again, what happens when he dies? So we said if he dies, he would say, what do you mean? The shifcha goes free. No, we said the shifcha can't get remarried unless they get a get shikhr. Besides for the guy dying, for making him hefker, etc., the Maisa, he needs a get shikhr as well. So what happens in the case where the shifcha, where the Rabba would die? So what's he saying here? He's saying, before I die, he says, when I die, So you should go ahead and you shouldn't be yishtabduba. You shouldn't work her. What does that mean? You should set her free. So therefore, Kofin, this is what he asked, and as we'll see, we listen, mitzvah l'kaim divrei mace. So we listen to the mace, and we give them, we force the yorshim to write a get shecher. Amar lefana Rabbi Amir Rabbi Yasi Rabbi iyata modesh banei avadim. Come on, that's ridiculous. And as Rashi explains, when he says al yishtabdu ba la'achar motzi, it doesn't mean you shouldn't keep her and you shouldn't be able to work her as your shifcha. Just means take it easy on her. Doesn't mean you have to free her. Your understanding when he says al yishtabdu ba means you should free her. You should free her. How do you free her totally? You have to give her get shecher. So we learn you have to give her get shecher. Says Rav Ami and Ravasi, come on, Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. That's not what the guy's saying. The guy is saying, just take it easy on her. I took care of her when I was alive. When you inherit her, quote unquote, as an eved, just take care of her. But it doesn't mean that she goes free. It doesn't mean that we force him to write a get shecher. And if she remains the eved, so then by definition, all of her kids will remain the avadim, or any kids that she has at this point will remain avadim. Somebody says at the time he's about to die. Similarly, not that you should go ahead and you should free her, or as we're learning that you should be nice to her, but similarly, she's been very good to me. You should be good to her as well. We also force the Yorshim to do Karas Ruach. Now Rashi points out interestingly, over here we're not forcing the Yorshim to free her, but if they can be Koras Ruach, if they just can't physically take care of her nicely, it's either not their personalities or they just don't have the means, so then Eina Chanami, it's a mitzvah l'kaim divrei mace, and you have to actually go ahead and free her. But again, seemingly the way that we're learning here again is that the guy's not telling them you have to free them, just saying make sure that you take care of her. My taima mitzvah l'kaim divrei hames. Amar Meimar Hamafkir avdo osra eved ein lo takana. So if a guy is mafkir his eved, so that eved has no takana. Why not? We'll see in a second that we're going to learn in Ika Da'amri, which seems to make a little bit more sense. But if you make your eved hefker, so now the eved has no takana. Now what does it mean the eved has no takana? So Rashi seems to learn that the eved can't marry anybody. Because again, you made your eved mafkir, hefker. But we said what? Yeah, very nice. Now the eved doesn't quote unquote belong to you, and anybody can theoretically claim the eved off waivers. The problem is now that the eved can't get remarried, because what's the eved missing? A get shecher. If you make them hefker, they still need to get shecher. If you free them, they still need to get shecher. The get shecher can usually accomplish both. But if you just make the eved hefker, very nice, they can be claimed off waivers and they can be used by somebody else. Lamaisa, they need to get shecher to go ahead and to get. So this eved is stuck now. So Rashi explains, no, if you give a get shecher, sure, but the eved...
No, it would be good, because
yeah,
I
of
just
course.
noticed in the notes that it says.
The notes, I don't know about article notes, I don't know. I can't argue the article notes.
Military free, the document is ineffective because it cannot be effective. So we
now you can't give the shir because there's no anymore.
So that's what I'm saying. All right, we're getting to that. He doesn't know. In 1 second.
Everything we're getting free.
We'll get to the article notes in the next cycle. Hamafkir avdo osa eved ein lo takana. When you're mafkir the eved, so ein lo takana. Why? Because now you were mafkir it, so you can't go ahead and give the get shecher because it no longer belongs to you. But at the same token, nobody else can give the get shecher. So seemingly somebody can claim it off of waivers and give the get shecher, maybe, but you can't give the get shecher. So ein lo takana. Rashi learns that they can't marry anybody. Tosfos, interestingly, over here learns. If you look at the last line of the Tosfos on the left over there, a few lines down, ulakach nir de ein lo takana bebaschorin kamar. So the Totos learns that he still marry a shifcha because the Eved was always able to marry a shifcha. The Eved just can't marry a baschorin because since the other made her efker, he can't give her a get shecher. Says the Gemara, we're going to see. We're actually going to learn on Meimar differently. Why doesn't she have a takana? Why can't she marry a Yisrael? My time a gufe lo kanile, because the guf of the Eved is no longer belonging to the Adoni surahu de ikka gabe. He only has Isser control over the slave, i.e. the Isser to marry a Jew. But again, it's sort of like catch-22. He can't give the get shecher anymore because he made the Eved hefker. Says the Gemara, Amalei Ravashi la Meimar v'ha'amar Ula. How can this be true? Amar B'Yochanan, Rav Chia B'Rav and Amar Rav. Echad tevi echad ze yatsa l'cheres v'tzarech get shecher. But we see that Rav says that a regular Eved and even an Eved that was made hefker goes l'cheres and needs a get shecher. So you see over here that you can give a get shecher to an Eved that was hefker. Amalei tzarech ve'en lo takana. No, it doesn't say that you can give it. It's that it needs it. But l'maisa, the Eved can't get it, because we have no choice, because it's not kanilai, and therefore hamafkir avdo oto Eved ein lo takana. That's one pshat. Ika di amrei, which might be a little bit easier to understand. Amar meimar hamafkir avdo vames. No, If you're mafkir your eved, so then maybe einachanami, you're mafkir the eved, and now you can just go ahead and give it a get shechor anyway. But the case is where you're mafkir the eved and then you die. So now there's a little bit of problem. Now I understand a little bit more. We'll say it outside for a second. If I'm mafkir my eved and then I'm still alive, so okay, I was mafkir the eved, but lamaisa the eved's still connected to me somehow, and therefore I can give the get shechor. I don't have to do both at the same time. But if I'm mafkir the eved, or if someone is mafkir the eved and then that person dies, now we have a little bit of problem, because now the yorshin sort of inherited it, but didn't inherit. Like they inherited an eved, but didn't really inherit an eved because the eved is hefker. At the same token, like what did they inherit? It's like damaged goods, where it's like a hefker eved, but now that I understand is more of an issue for the kids to give the get shechor. When the father makes the eved hefker, now for the kids to give the get shechor, I could see that being a little bit more of a problem. That's what Ameimar says. Amar Ameimar, mafker avdo vameis, oso ha'eved ein lo takano. My time, why? Because gufe lo kanilei. Isura hu de'ika gabe. V'isura, the difference is not v'isura lo matzi machnile, because I could hear an argument that even when I'm mafkid, I could still give the get shechor. But isura libre lo moris. But while the children might inherit this hefker eved, and again, maybe they can do a kinyan on the eved and then take it back for themselves, and then maybe they can do a get shechor. But it sounds like if they want to go ahead, because again, if the eved is hefker, so I would assume that you can then get the eved for yourself and then do whatever you want with it. But it sounds like the Gemara is saying that when you're inheriting a hefker eved, so now you inherited this hefker eved, but you don't have the right to give the eved the get shechor, because after all, it wasn't you who made the eved hefker. That's what Ameimar says. Says the Gemara, Amalei Ravashi la Ameimar, v'haki asa Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. But you see that Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan says what? That if a person says Al Yishtabdu Ba, Kofin Es HaYorshin, because we see what? Remember that case where he said Al Yishtabdu Ba, that you shouldn't work her too hard, or the way we learned it originally in Rav Dimi, you shouldn't go ahead and be Meshabe that Eved. What do we say? If the person dies, so we force the Yorshim. What do you see there? You see that when a person dies, the Yorshim can still give a get shechor. So what we see over here, Rav Dimi Rabbi Yochanan, yeah, very nice, but we rejected Rav Dimi. To Rav Dimi Ta'usahi. Amalei my two. So what was the ta'usa? Delo amra belashon shechor. We said because he didn't say belashon shechor. Ha amra belashon shechor hachanami. So the Gemara says you're right. We rejected Rav Dimi. And we said that Rav Dimi doesn't mean that you should go ahead. Rav Dimi just says take care of her nicely. We say take care of her nicely. So obviously they can go ahead and they can be forced to give a he just says go take care of them nicely. But if he actually says that you should go ahead and you should free her, say nechanami, you have to free her and you give a get shechor. Ha'amra belashon shechor hachanami. The Gemara seems to be saying that if a person is mafkir his eved and he dies, so we might have a problem. We might have a problem with the kids going ahead and giving a get shechor. But if the person, before he dies, goes ahead and he says to the shivcha, not just your hefker, but your bas chorin, without giving the get shechor, and then he dies, then the kids can go ahead and give the get shechor. That's the important part here again. If you have a case where he just says mafkir the shivcha, then you're right. You might have a little bit of a problem. If you just mafkir the shivcha, then you might run into problems because now, like, you're not here, you're not there, and maybe the kids can't the kids can't go ahead and give the get shechor. But if the I don't say the chiddush, but what he's teaching us here is that ha'amra belashon shechor hachanami amalei ana kidirav Shmuel bar Yehuda svirali. He's saying that in the case where he goes ahead and he says harei at bar chorin, you are a bas chorin, and then he dies, so then the right to give the get shechor pass on to the children. Fine. Zak the Gemara.
But they have to let him. They have to let her go.
Seemingly, also they have to let her go.
They don't have a choice.
Right. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. Okay. Hahu diskarta de avde de izdavin laove kochavim. There was a group of avadim, Jewish avadim, who were sold to non-Jews. Kalu marvasa basrai. Then their non-Jewish owners died. Now we know the halacha is that when a Jewish eved is sold to a non-Jew, so in terms of halachic purposes, even though obviously the non-Jew is going to work the eved, in terms of halachic purposes, so the eved is yatza l'cheres. Once your eved is sold to an ovei kochavim, from a halachic perspective, that eved is free. The problem is what? The eved is free, but not free. First of all, the eved is not free because the ovei kochavim can work them, but more importantly for halachic purposes, the eved is free, but the eved does not yet have a get shechor. So says the Gemara, in the case where an eved ivri was sold to an ovei kochavim kalu marvasa basrai, and now the Ovei Kochavim dies. So what happens? So now they want to get married. So Asul Kamei de Ravina, where they want to get married to a Jewish girl. Armelu Zilu Ahadoru Abnei Marvasa Kamai V'yichtavu Lechu Gita de Charusa. Seemingly the first owner died. It sounds like if their original owner was still alive, then all they got to do is go back to the original owner and get a get shecher. But now the original owner died. So now they're Yatza L'cheres. They were Yatza L'cheres halachically as soon as they were sold, and now physically they're Yatza L'cheres because their second Adon dies, wasn't passed on, whatever, they get out. And now, L'maisa, they want to get married. So what do? So now they have to go back to the kids of the original owner and get shecher from them. Zilu Adora Bnei Marvasa Kamai V'yichtavu Lechu Gita de Charusa. Amar le Rabbanan le Ravina. But we said that if somebody makes him hefker and then he dies, the eved has no takana, i.e., how can the kids give a get shecher for the father who's dead? Amarlu anak Ravdimi spherely, Amarle Ravdimi tausi, Amarlu my tausa delo Amar belashon shecher, Amar belash shecher chanami b'yochsa karavina. Now again, the Mefarshim don't explain this, but the way that I understood this is that it must have been that when the original Adon sold it to the Ovdei Kochavim, which maybe wasn't okay, but it sounds like he didn't just sell it to Ovdei Kochavim. It sounds like he wrote Harei Atem Ben Chorin, you are free. And if he uses Harei Atem Ben Chorin when selling it to the Ovdei Kochavim, then that right to be giving the get shecher pass on to the sons. And as Rabbi Black was saying, seemingly they're kofin, so they have to go ahead and actually give the get shecher. It doesn't sound like they could say, now, no, you need to come work for us. But in a chanami, whenever there's a lashon of shecher, whenever there's a lashon of Ben Chorin used by the original owner before he dies, so now the children, by definition, not only can give a get shecher, but have to give a get shecher. But that's the case over here. But in a chanami, just like in a case where hamafkir avdo, if somebody's just mafkir their eved and then they die without saying the lashon of Harei Atem Ben Chorin, the eved might really have a problem. So to here, if the eved is sold to an Ovei Kochavim and the adon doesn't actually go ahead and say Harei Atem Ben Chorin, doesn't use this lashon of shecher, ein achanami, after the Ovei Kochavim dies and he comes back to the children, you might halachically, even if the children want to give a get, you might halachically have an issue because the children might not have a right to give the get shecher from their father. Zok the Gemara. Hahu avda de beitre. There was an eved that was owned by two owners, very common. Kam chad mino v'shachrei lepalge. So one of the owners went ahead and freed their half. So now what do you have? Now you have a half eved and half free. So now they can't marry anybody. They can't marry an eved, and this is even worse than the case over there, because at least the case over there, he can maybe marry a shifcha, according to Tosfos. Over here, he can't marry anybody. The half eved part can't marry a free person, and the half free person can't marry an eved person. Says the Gemara, Amar idach hashta shmiya bi rabbanan umafsadu limine. So the halacha happens to be that once one of the two sides frees the eved, because of this problem, rabbanan, the Beis Din, forces the other owner to free their half. Now it gets compensated. So the owner will get compensated by the eved. The eved needs to pay for that freedom. But at the end of the day, we force the second owner to free the second half. Says the Gemara, so this guy's a smart guy, so he knows that Beis Din is going to hear about the fact that his partner freed the eved, and now he's going to be forced to free his half. So what does he do? Azal akne libno katan. I'm going to give my half over to my son, right? Somebody told me last night, right? When business is going bad, what do? You give it over to your wife. So over here, the eved is going, it's not working out so well, so he's going to lose his half in the eved, so he gives it over to his katan. Why is that going to help? Because if the katan gets it, Beis Din can't come and force the katan to come to Beis Din. Now the katan seemingly has to be old enough. It has to be like at that age, like 7, 8, whatever, from like 8 to 13, where they have bendas, where they have knowledge, but they can't be forced in Beis Din. Because if they didn't have knowledge, seemingly giving it over. So what is the guy? The guy's a chacham. He says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give my half over to my katan son, to my 9-year-old son. So now the eved will stay in the family. Beis Din can't force me to get rid, and the eved's stuck. But lamaisa, I found a way around the system.
But isn't that a time limited thing? By the time he hits 13, then they can force him.
About 5 years.
Seemingly, yeah,
Whatever.
but okay, so I still get 5 years.
There's a time limit on it.
5 years is a long time. It's a lot of pasta. I could eat a lot of pasta in 5 years, but they're making me pasta. Shalcha Rav Yosef Brei Dirava Lekame Dirav Papa. Shalach Lei Kasher Asa Kain De Yaselo Gimulo Yashelo Brosh. I don't know where this pasuk is. It's not a pasuk. There's like a play on words in a pasuk, but it's saying we will get him back. We will go ahead and we'll get him back. He thinks he could outsmart Beis Din. We'll outsmart him. What are we going to do? We know that all kids love two things: candy and money. So we know that the kid loves money. So what are we going to do? We're going to appoint an apotropos for him. We're going to appoint somebody who can be his agent, quote unquote, to deal with his monetary matters. Why do we need that? What are we going to do? The Eved is going to take a few coins. It's going to go over to the young gentleman, the 9-year-old. He's going to start shaking gold coins. The young gentleman's going to say, oh, what are those? Those are gold coins. Oh, what can you do with those? Oh, you can buy a lot of candy. Oh, so where do I get those? If you free me, you get the coins. So he's not going to think about all the pasta he could have. He'd rather have all the candy. So he's going to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to free you. So the guy thinks he can get around it by giving it over to the 9-year-old son. We can outsmart the guy because we know that if we go to a 9-year-old son with zuzeh, he'll take the zuzeh. And therefore we go with a few coins. We shake it in front of the 9-year-old son. He'll say, give me the money. What do I need to do? Sign here. He'll sign here. And Lamaisa, the guy will go free. And Rashi does add that even though you're only shaking a few coins, at the end of the day you do have to give, and that's why they need an apotropos. You do have to pay the rest. We said that in a regular case where Beis Din forces, if it's two adults, and Beis Din forces, if one of them frees the Eved, Beis Din forces the other one to free his part of the Eved, but the Eved pays that adult. So too over here. Even though he gave it over to his son, so we're going to be able to bribe the son, but at the end of the day, even though we're only bribing him with 3/4, and that's enough for him to sign away the Eved, but Lamaisa, the Eved still needs to pay the rest of the money, the few $100, $1,000, whatever it is, and that money goes to the apotropos. But at the end of the day, the point was that we're able to outsmart the father who wants to keep the Eved and say, no, we'll go ahead, we'll approach the son, and we'll be able to convince the son to free his half of the Eved.
Probably the administrator has to sign it, not the son.
Yeah, in a Hanami, that's why the administrator was appointed.
So Cotton can do all of these?
No, that's why there's an apotropos. That's why the Gemara says that there's an apotropos. They appoint an apotropos to do all of this stuff on behalf of the son, but again, the son has to seemingly agree. Right, he can't do any legal stuff, but he has to agree to give up his half in the Eved. A few quarters is enough to agree, and then the apotropos does the arrangements, and we got around the father's plan. Yeah. Tana Rabbanan, Haomer Asisi Ploni Avdi Ben Chorin, Asoy Ben Chorin, Harehu Ben Chorin, Harehu Ben Chorin. The quotes are Asisi until Harehu Ben Chorin. The second Harehu Ben Chorin is telling us the din. So if the guy writes, I made my Eved Ben Chorin, he's made to be Ben Chorin. Harehu Ben Chorin, then the guy's free. Asenu Ben Chorin, if he writes, I will make him Ben Chorin, or seemingly if he'll say, I'll make him Ben Chorin, Rabbi Omer Kana, he's made Ben Chorin, V'chamim Romim Lo Kana, as Rashi explains. V'ku Omer Yochanan V'kulam Bishtar. This is also, it says Omer, but it means Bishtar. It means if I write in the star, I made Ploni free, he's free. He was free, then he becomes free with that star. If I write in a star, I will make him free, so there's a machlokes. Rebbe says when I write, I will make him free, what am I saying? I'm making him free. I will make him free when? Right now. And he goes free with the star. Says Chaim, no, when I write in a star that I will make him free, it doesn't mean I'll make him free right now. It means that I promise that at a later date, I'm going to make him free with another star. That's the machlokes, Chachamim and Rebbe. Tana Rabbanan.
Can they have a star where he says, I'll make him free in December?
Seemingly, yeah. The question is, when he says, I will make him free, is he free right now or not? That's a machlokes Chaim and Rabbi. We're going to see that there's actually a consequence for matanas, as we'll see in 1 second. Tana Rabbanan. Don't worry, it's all flying from here. Ha'omer natati sadeh plonis leploni. I gave my sadeh to Ploni. Again, every time it says Ha'omer, as Rabbi Yochanan is going to say again, it's Kulam Bishtar. It means it was written. I gave my sadeh to Ploni. It was given to Ploni. It belongs to Ploni. Harehi Shalo. Harehi Shalo. It belongs to Ploni. At Nena Ploni, I will give this field to Ploni. Meir Omer, if he writes that, then Kana. Guy gets it out, because when it says I will give the field to Ploni, it means I will give it to him right now with the star. No, it means I will give the field to Ploni at a later date with another star. Rabbi Yochanan Kulam Bishtar. Again, even though it says Ha'omer, all of these cases are with a star. Tana Rabbanan, listen to this case. Ha'omer Asisi Ploni Avdi Ben Chorin. If he writes that I made Ploni Ben Chorin, who Omer, and he said, you never made me Ben Chorin, even though in this case seemingly it could be that he said it. So basically the guy doesn't want to go free. He has a good life as an Eved. He gets food, he gets a place to sleep, and now the guy said, I made you free. And the Eved says, you never made me free. We say that the guy's actually free. Even though the Eved denies being free, he's free because we have to assume that when the Adon said he was free, he could have made him free through somebody else, right? Because what could I do? I could be Zochen la'adam shelo b'fanav. Seemingly, as much as Eved doesn't want to go free, which is interesting. Even though he doesn't want to go free, we consider it to be his chutz for him to go free. And we can say that the Adon was Zochen la'adam. He gave a star to somebody else to act as the shaliach, that on behalf of the Eved, now he is free. But listen to this case. Kasafti v'nasati lo. That was a case where he said, I made him free. So he could have made him free by giving the star to somebody else. But if he said, I wrote it and I gave it to him, the Eved, V'hu omer, and the Eved says, Lo katsav li v'notzan li, you never gave me my star of going free. Hodaz baldin kameya edim dami. In that case, he's not free, because again, the fact that the Adon said, I wrote it and I gave it to you, and he says, you never gave it to me, so in that case, if he admits that he never got it, or he denies getting it, then Hodaz baldin, the baldin here being the Eved, kameya edim dami, and we believe him. Right? You understand the difference. Over there, he said that I freed you. I freed you, it could have been through somebody else. But if he's claiming that I freed you by giving you the document, and then the Eved denies getting that document, then we believe the Eved. In the other case, it's not a matter of believing the Eved. It's when he says, you are a free man, so the Eved could say, you never told me I'm a free man, and we could say, it doesn't matter, because even if he didn't tell you you're a free man, Lamaisi could have made you a free man through somebody else. But in this case, where he himself, the Adon, is claiming, I made you a free man with you, and he's saying, you did not make me a free man with me, so in that case, in fact, the Eved will not go free. Haomer natati sada plonis leploni. So if I said, I gave the sada plonis to Ploni, v'hu omer, and he said, lo natan li, chashinan shemazika lo yideacher. Again, why would the guy not want the sada? We've discussed this before. Because if I have people that I owe money to, so I'd rather pay them back first, and then I'll collect this, and then I'll take the sada from you as a present. But if I really like your sada, and now you're giving it to me today, I know that all of my people that I owe money to, all the debtors are going to come and they're going to take the sada away. So you said that you gave me a sada. I said you never gave me a, you said that you gave me a sada. I said you never gave me a sada. We have to assume that you gave him a sada, because the Maisa, you could have given him the sada through somebody else. You could have been mizakin l'adam shelo b'fanav. However, if he writes kasafti v'nasati lo, I wrote it, not just that I gave you a sada, but I wrote the piece of paper giving you the sada and I gave it to you. V'hu omer, and the guy who's receiving it says lo kasav lo nasanli, you didn't give it to me. So there the guy's claiming I gave it to you, but I specifically gave it to you not through somebody else, but I gave it to you through yourself. And he says you never gave it to me through myself. Hodaz baldin kamei edim dami. Baldin kamei edim dami, and he doesn't get the field. The question is mi ochal peros. Who gets the peros? In the case where he says that I handed you the document and you said you never handed me the document, so we're saying it stays with the original owner, but who gets the peros? So what kind of question is that? Rav Chistam or notin ochal peros? Obviously, if the guy's keeping his sada, so he gets to keep the peros. For Rabbi Mar Mishalshin as a peros. If Rabbanan say, it's interesting, in Makos, Mishalshin means to split three ways. Over here, Mishalshin doesn't mean. Rashi says Mishalshin means to appoint a third party, and Achiyav Eliyahu. So it's very interesting. Rabba, and it doesn't make sense at first glance, and that's why the Gemara is about to change the pshat. But at first glance, right here, Rabba is saying that, again, the guy says, I gave you the field with a piece of paper. Because if you just said, I gave it to you, and the guy said, you didn't give it to me, we could say, no, he gave it to him through somebody else, and then this guy, I have to accept the field. But if I say, I gave it to you by handing you the piece of paper, and now I say you didn't hand me the piece of paper, so we just said, so I can reject it, because I say you're claiming to have given it to me, I'm claiming that I didn't get it from you, so I don't get the matana. So I don't get the matana, so then what's the question? The question is, you keep the matana, so what's the question? Who eats the peros? Of course you eat the peros. You're the owner, you claim to have given it to me, I claim to never got it from you, and therefore you keep the sada. So Rabba says, no, we put the peros away until Achiyav. That doesn't seem to make any sense. Lamaisa belongs to the owner. Why should we put it away? Says the Gemara, lo pligi. No, they're not arguing. Ha be'aba, ha be'bra. That's by the father, and that's by the bra. Einachanami. By the father, where the father claims he's still alive, and now the father claims, I gave you the field, yourself with the paper, and he says, and I say, you never gave me the field with the paper. So of course, we said it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the father, and of course everybody agrees that the father gets the peros, even Rabbah. The case is where now the guy is coming and saying, look at Rashi. In So now I say I gave you the field, and now the guy died. So now I'm saying to the sons, I gave your father the field, and the sons say, you never gave my father the field. So what happens now? So now they're rejecting the fact that they ever got the field from the guy. So now the owner gets to own the field, but we have to be choshesh that maybe in fact the father did get the field, and therefore the guy keeps the field but can't eat the peros, because in case he actually gave the field to the guy or to the father, then he'll be stealing the peros. That's what Rabba would say. The other opinion, Rav Chisda would say, no. Once we're saying that the field belongs to him, so in halachic terms the field belongs to him, and we don't have to be choshesh that he's actually stealing. So again, in the case where both of them are still alive, so it goes to the owner, and the owner can obviously use the peros. It's a case specifically where the other guy dies, the guy that he claims to have given the field to dies, and therefore when the kids say, we never got the field, our father never got the field, so according to Rabbah, we paskin what? According to Rabbah, we paskin that in a chanami, everybody agrees that the owner gets to keep the field, but Rabbah says we need to be choshesh that he really gave the field over, and therefore, even though he keeps the field, he can't eat the peros. And Rav Chisda says, no, once we're saying halachit that he gets to keep the field, of course he can eat the peros as well.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
In the cases where the the owner saying, I gave you a star, or I gave you a document, and he denies that he received the document, why is that a stronger proof that we believe the person who's denying it as compared to the other case?
Because again,
he may have a motivation too?
No, that's not. It's not a din in the motivation. The point is that if I say to you, I gave you a field, and then you say to me, you never gave me a field, so we have to assume that when I said that I gave you a field, I gave it to you through somebody else. That's the point. It's not a matter of a motivation. It's that there's no way for you to know whether I gave you the field or not. I'm claiming that I gave you the field. You're claiming you didn't give it to me, and I could say, what do you mean? How do you know that I didn't give you a field? I'm telling you that I gave it to you through him, through somebody else. So there, in that case, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say that you own the field. But if I specifically say, I gave you the field by handing you the keys to the field, and you say you never handed me the keys to the field, so I'm not claiming to have given it to you through somebody else. I'm claiming to have given it to you specifically through you. In that case, if you deny, so you can actually know or not. Whether you're telling the truth, I don't know. But as Bayt, we need to believe you. We believe you in the first case as well, that he never gave it to you. But we're saying we're going to believe me also, that I gave it through somebody else. But in this case, we can't believe both of us, because if it's a matter of I gave it to you myself by handing you the keys, and you're saying you didn't hand me the keys, we need to believe one of us. So who we're going to believe? Hodaz Baldin Kamei Edem Dami. You, the one who's supposed to be receiving it, we're going to believe you, and we're not going to believe me, and I'm going to keep the field. That's the difference between the two cases. Says the Mishnah, Evet Shaso Rabo Aputiki Lacherim Veshicharo. I'm just going to start this. We'll start the Gemara, but the Gemara is going to explain all of this stuff in the Mishnah. So there's an Eved, and his Rabbo made him a collateral. So the Rabbo borrowed money and made him a collateral. V'shichraro. And then seemingly somebody freed him. So again, I have an Eved. I want to borrow money from you. I say, can I please borrow money? No. You know what? I'll give you my Eved as collateral. The Eved's here. He still belongs to me, but he's collateral now for the loan that I borrowed from you. V'shichraro. Now somebody freed him. Either I freed him, the owner of the Eved, or you, the one who has him as collateral, freed him. Shura Sadin. So the letter of the law is Eina Evet Chayev Klum. The Evet's free, because of Maiseh, whoever freed him, freed him. Ela Mipnei Tikun HaOlam, because of the way of the land. Kofines Rabbo, we force his Rabbo. We don't know who that is. Again, who's his Rabbo? Me, the original guy. You, the guy that has him as collateral. Ve'oso so ben chorin. We make him ben chorin. Ve'chosev shtar al damav, and he needs to basically pay for his freedom. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer Eino kosev ela meshachar. He doesn't have to pay for his freedom. He just goes free. So let's just see one shot in the Gemara, and then again the Gemara will continue. Evet shasar rabba b'tiki v'shicharo mishicharo. So I made him into a collateral. The question is now, somebody freed him. Who freed him? Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Rabba Rishon, Amarav Rabba Rishon. So basically what happened is I borrowed money from you, I made him into a collateral, and then I said, now that I got my money, I'm going to free my Eved. So basically you have no claim on the collateral anymore, because I just freed the Eved. Says the Gemara, Shura Sadin Eina Eved Chayev Klum L'Rabbo Sheni. So Mishura Sadin, the letter of the law is he's free, because I still own him. Very nice, I made him collateral, but I still owe him. We have a minute, fine. But I still owe him. So Lamaisa, now that you happen to have I messed over the guy who I borrowed the money from, because now if I go bankrupt, he has nothing to collect, because I just freed my Eved. Too bad. That's not the Eved's problem. The Lamaisa, the Eved is free. Says the Gemara, even though Mishura Sadin, the Eved is free, Rava, Hekdesh, Chametz, V'Shichar, Mafkiyan, Midei Shibud. We'll get back to Hekdesh and Chametz in a second, but you see clearly, like Rava, that when you do Shichar, so now he's no longer Mishabed. Once you free him, he's free and he's no longer collateral. Ella Mipnei Tikun Olam, for the way of the world, Shema Yimseenu B'Shuk V'Yomer Lo Avdiata, Kofines Rabo Sheni V'Osin Oso Ben Chorin V'Kosev Evet Shtar Al Damav. We'll stop there. But what does he say? He says, you're right. In terms of letter of the law, this Evet is free. But what's going to happen? So you, who I borrowed money from, you're going to be really upset at me because I basically messed you over. So what's going to happen? You're going to be walking in the street, and you're going to see the Evet who's now a free man, and in the middle of the shuk, you're going to make it into like this whole big, you're going to embarrass him, you're going to make it into like this whole big thing and say, you're really supposed to be mine. What do you mean, my guy? And you're going to embarrass the Eved, as Rashi says, Yotzi Lazal Banam. You're going to start talking negatively about the Ava. The poor Eved didn't do anything wrong. He was just used as collateral. His Rabbo, the original Rabbo, did something wrong by freeing him when he was a collateral. So Mipnei Tikun Olam, even though mitzad the letter of the law, he's free, Mipnei Tikun Olam, what do? We have the Eved pay for his freedom. the Evet should pay the second Rabbo for his freedom. The Rabbo Sheni, you who I borrowed money from, should write a shtar shichur for him. This way you won't go out and embarrass him. This way, even though he theoretically didn't have to buy himself money, he's willing to pay a few dollars so that he doesn't later get embarrassed with you who is upset at me for having made him collateral and then freeing him. So Mibnei Tikkun Olam, we're going to go ahead and ask you to please write a get shichur, and because of that, since I messed you over, because of that, it's basically like saying, let's get the Evet out of this. So Lamaisa, the Evet will give you a few dollars. You're basically writing off, okay, I'm not going to embarrass the Evet in public. I'm not going to claim that he belongs to me. And now the two of us can go ahead